Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Unlocking Knowledge with Toni Land. We are reading The Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise, Project 2025. Now, for those who've been with me, you already know this, but it's always a good reminder. And for those who are new, why are we doing this? Why are we reading Project 2025? Well, I will tell you, it goes back to my people being destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. And so we are intentionally taking a step back from being spoon fed information and really leaning in and getting knowledge for ourselves so that then we're able to prayerfully digest that knowledge and form thoughts and opinions for ourselves. So, with that being said, I will not be offering my own thoughts and my own opinions, as I don't want to be an influence on you. Now, I will tell you, it's not pleasure reading. It's not easy reading. This is not a murder mystery or a thriller. Although some people might say it's a little bit of a reality show. So it could be interesting, but it is important for us to push through and truly get knowledge so that we can gain wisdom as we move forward. So we have gotten through the foreword of the book, and we started into section 1, which was taking the reins of government. And we went through the foreword or the overview on that portion in our last reading. So if you haven't read those, you can click on the YouTube link and you'll find any readings that we've had on the YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe there too, so that you know when things are posted. And so we started in our last session reading chapter 1 of section 1, which is The White House Office by Rick Dearborn. So we've gotten through some of that, probably about a third of it. And we are now going to dig right into the next portion in that same chapter 1. And hopefully we can get through chapter 1 during this reading today. Okay, we finished up with the staff secretary last time, and next on our list is the Office of Communications. So the Office of Communications, which operates under the Director of Communications, conveys the President's agenda to the public through various media, including speeches and remarks, press briefings, off-the-record discussions with reporters, and social media. Depending on how a president chooses to structure his White House, the Office of Communications may include the Office of the Press Secretary, Press Office, but no matter how it is structured, the office must work closely with the press office as well as the president's speech writers and digital strategists. Operational functions of the Office of Communications include scheduling and running press briefings, interviews, meetings, media appearances, speeches, and a range of other events. The Office of Communications must maintain robust relationships with the White House Press Corps, the White House Correspondents Association, regional stakeholders, and key interest groups. No legal entitlement exists for the provision of permanent space for media on the White House campus, and the next administration should re-examine the balance between media demands and space constraints on the White House premises. Leadership within the Office of Communications should include a communications director who is a direct report to the Chief of Staff, a deputy communications director, a deputy director of strategic communications, and a press secretary. This leadership team must work closely together to drive the national narrative about the White House. The best resource for the Office of Communications is the President. The President conveys the White House's overall message through one or two inaugural addresses, State of the Union addresses, speeches to Congress, and press conferences. The office must also ensure that the various White House offices disseminate a unified message to the public. The communications director and press secretary in particular should be careful to avoid contradicting the president or delivering conflicting information. The speech writing team is a critical component of communications team. Speech writing is a unique talent. The writers selected must understand policy, should have a firm grasp of history and other liberal arts disciplines, and should be able to learn and adopt the president's style of rhetoric and mode of delivery. The press secretary is the president's spokesperson, communicating to the American people through the media. The press secretary engages with the White House press corps formally through press briefings and informally through impromptu gaggles and meetings. Individuals who serve in this role must be quick on their feet, which means when appropriate, definitely refuting and rebutting correspondents' questions and comments. The communications director must convey the president's mission to the American people. Especially for conservatives, this means navigating the mainstream media to ensure that the president's agenda is conveyed effectively and accurately. The communications director must be politically savvy and very aware of the ongoing activities of the other White House offices. The new administration should examine the nature of the relationship between itself and the White House Correspondents Association and consider whether an alternative coordinating body might be more suitable. Next on our list is the Office of Legislative Affairs, OLA. Created by President Dwight Eisenhower, the OLA, or Office of Legislative Affairs, has continued to serve as the liaison between the White House and Congress. The White House must work with congressional leaders to ensure presidential nominees for roles such as cabinet secretaries and ambassadors are confirmed by the state. The White House also relies on Congress to enact reforms promised by the president on the campaign trail, whether those promises relate to healthcare, education, or national defense. Because Congress holds the power of the purse, White House staffers must ensure that there is enough support on the Hill to secure the necessary funding through the appropriations process to fulfill the president's agenda. The OLA reports directly to the Chief of Staff, and in some administrations has done so under the guidance of a Deputy Chief of Staff, usually the Deputy Chief for Policy. Regardless of the person to whom the OLA reports, however, the office exercises a certain autonomy on behalf of the President and the Chief of Staff in directly influencing congressional leaders of both major political parties. The OLA often must function as the mediator among the parties and find common ground to facilitate the successful enactment of the president's agenda. As is the case with many White House offices, but especially the Office of Communications, the OLA must ensure that congressional leaders receive one unified message. If other actors within the White House maintain their own relationships with congressional leaders and staffers, it may appear that the president's agenda is fractured and lacks consensus. This dynamic has caused real problems for many presidents in the past. Internally, OLA staffers need to be involved in policy discussions, budget reviews, and other important meetings. They must also provide advice to policy staffers regarding whether certain ideas are politically feasible. Externally, OLA staffers have to communicate continuously with congressional offices of both parties in both the House and the Senate to ensure that the president has enough support to enact his legislative priorities or sustain votes. The OLA requires staffers who are effective communicators and can provide a dose of reality to other White House staffers when necessary. Although a policy proposal from within the White House may be a great idea, OLA staffers must ensure that it is politically feasible. OLA staffers must therefore be skilled in both politics and policy. Furthermore, the president should seek out individuals who can advance his agenda and at the same time forge pathways with members of the opposing political party on other priorities. Most important, the OLA must function as a well-oiled machine, precisely synced. The president cannot afford to have a tennis player on, much less as the leader of his football team. Next up, Office of Presidential Personnel, PPO. The political axiom that personnel is policy was popularized under President Ronald Reagan during the 1981 presidential transition. One of the most important offices in the White House is the PPO, Office of Presidential Personnel, which was created under President Richard Nixon to centralize political appointments. Departments and agencies had and still have direct legal authority on hiring and firing, but the power to fill Schedule C positions, the core of political jobs, is vested with the president. Therefore, the White House, not the department or agency, has the final word on political appointments. PPO's primary responsibility is to staff the executive branch with individuals who are equipped to implement the president's agenda. Although its focus should be identifying and recruiting leaders to fill the approximately 1,000 appointments that require Senate confirmation, PPO must also fill approximately 3,000 political jobs that require dedicated conservatives to support the administration's political leadership. Frequently, many medium-tier and top-tier jobs have been filled by policy experts tasked with accomplishing much of the work of the administration. At the same time, appointees in the entry-level jobs have brought invaluable energy and commitment to the White House and have proved to be the farm team for the conservative movement. The Office of Presidential Personnel is responsible for identifying potential political personnel, both actively through recruitment and passively by fielding resumes and adjudicating requests from political actors. Secondly, vetting potential political personnel by conducting political background checks and reviewing any clearance and fitness assessments by departments and agencies. Thirdly, making recommendations to the president and to other appointment authorities on behalf of the president. Number 4, identifying programmatic political workforce needs early and developing plans. For example, Schedule F. Number 5, maintaining a strong relationship with the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, both for operational purposes and to effectuate the president's direct Title V authorities. The president is in charge of federal workforce and exercises control principally by working through the director of the Office of Personnel Management. Number 6, training and connecting political personnel. Number 7, playing bad cop in a way that other White House offices cannot, including serving as the office that takes direct responsibility for firings and hirings. Number 8, serving as a personnel link between conservative organizations and the executive branch. In most administrations, PPO will staff more than 100 positions during a transition and thousands of non-career positions during the president's first term. Direct authority and a strong relationship with the president are necessary attributes for any PPO director. Historically, PPO has had a direct review and control of personnel files, including security clearance dossiers. At the highest level, PPO is tasked with long-term strategic workforce development. The billets of political appointments are of immense importance in credentialing and training future leaders. In addition, whatever one's view of the constitutionality of various civil service rules, for example, the Federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1998, might be, it is necessary to ensure that departments and agencies have robust cadres of political staff just below senior levels in the event of unexpected vacancies. Next on our list, Office of Political Affairs, OPA. The OPA is the primary office within the executive branch for managing the president's political interests. Although its specific functions vary from administration to administration, the OPA typically serves as a liaison between the president and associated political entities, national committees, federal and state campaigns, and interest groups. Within legal guidelines, the OPA engages in outreach, conducts casework, and if the president is up for re-election, assist with his campaign. The OPA may also monitor congressional campaigns, arrange presidential visits with other political campaigns, and recommend campaign staff to the Office of Presidential Personnel for service in the executive branch. The OPA further serves as a line of communication between the White House and the president's political party. This includes both relaying the president's ambitions to political interest and listening to the needs of political interest. This relationship allows for the exchange of information between the White House and political actors across the country. The OPA should have one director of political affairs who reports either to the chief of staff or to a deputy chief of staff. The OPA should also include various deputy directors, each of whom is responsible for a certain geographical region of the country. Because nearly all White House activities are in some way inherently political, the OPA needs to be aware of all presidential actions and activities, including travel, policy decisions, speeches, nominations, and responses to matters of national security, and consider how they might affect the president's image. The OPA must therefore have a designated staffer who communicates not only with other White House offices, but also with the cabinet and executive branch agencies. Next on our list, the Office of Cabinet Affairs, OCA. The OCA's role has changed to some degree over the course of various administrations, but its overriding function remains the same: to ensure the coordination of policy and communication between the White House and the cabinet. Most important, the OCA coordinates all cabinet meetings with the president. It should also organize and administer regular meetings of the deputy secretaries because they also typically serve vital roles in the departments and agencies, and further, often become acting secretaries when other cabinet members resign. There should be one cabinet secretary who reports to the Chief of Staff's office, either directly or through a deputy chief, according to the chief's preference and focus. The cabinet secretary maintains a direct relationship with all members of the cabinet. The OCA further consists of deputies and special assistants who work with each department's principal, deputy secretary, undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, and other senior staff. The OCA also connects the departments to WHO offices. The OCA coordinates with the Chief of Staff's office and the Office of Communications to promote the President's agenda through the Cabinet departments and agencies. The Cabinet's communications staffers are obviously another critical component of this operation. In prior administrations, the OCA has played a vital role by tracking the President's agenda for the Chief of Staff, deputy chiefs, and senior advisors. It has worked with each department and agency to advance policy priorities. In the future, amplifying this function would truly benefit both the president and the conservative movement. From time to time throughout an administration, travel optics, ethics challenges, and Hatch Act issues involving cabinet members, deputies, and senior staffers can arise. The OCA is normally tasked with keeping the WHO informed of such developments and providing support if and when necessary. The ideal cabinet secretary will have exceptional organizational skills and be a seasoned political operative or attorney. Because many cabinet officials have been former presidential candidates, governors, ambassadors, and members of Congress, the ideal candidate should also possess the ability to interact with and persuade accomplished individuals. Next up, we go right into the Office of Public Liaison, OPL. The OPL, or Office of Public Liaison, is critically important in building coalitions and support for the president's agenda across a very aligned social, faith-based, minority, and economic interest group. It is a critical tool for shaping public opinion and keeping myriad supporters as well as frenemies and opponents alike who are within reach better informed. The OPL is a notably large office. It should have one director who reports to the Chief of Staff's office, either directly or through a deputy, according to the Chief's preference and focus. The director must maintain relationships not only with the other WHO heads, but also with the senior staff of every cabinet department and agency. Since a president's agenda is always in motion, it is important for the OPL to facilitate listening sessions to receive the views of the various leaders and members of key interest groups. The OPL should also have a sufficient number of deputies and special assistants to cover the vast number of disparate interest groups that are engaged daily. The OPL has by far held more meetings in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, EEOB, and within the West Wing itself than any other office within WHO. The OPL is the chief White House enforcer and gatekeeper among various interest groups. It has operated best whenever the Chief of Staff has given it permission to use both the proverbial carrot and the proverbial stick. To make this work, communication with the Chief's office is vital. Additionally, the OPL has had an outsized role in presidential scheduling and both official and political travel. The OPL director should come from the president's election campaign or Capitol Hill, but should not have deeply entrenched connections to a K Street entity or any other potential stakeholder. Some prior relationships can create real or perceived biases toward one group or another. The director should be amiable, gregarious, highly organized, and willing to shoulder criticism and pushback from interest groups and other elements of the administration. Unlike the director, OPL deputies and special assistants need a deep understanding of the Capitol, from K Street to Capitol Hill. They should have extensive experience in the private industry, the labor sector, the conservative movement, and among the specific interest groups in which they will be asked to engage on behalf of the White House. OPL staffers work with more external and internal parties than any other WHO staffers. In turn, they must be effective communicators and initiative takers. They must also be able to influence, persuade, and most important, listen to various stakeholders and ensure that they feel heard. All OPL staffers must understand from the outset that their jobs might be modified or even phased out entirely as the administration's priorities change. Okay, let's see if we can push through at least one more during this time together, and that's going to be the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, or the IGA. The IGA connects the White House to the state, county, local, and tribal governments. In other words, it is the one-stop shop for disseminating an administration's agenda to all non-federal government entities. The IGA should have a director to whom one or two deputy directors report. The director must ensure that the White House remains connected to all non-federal government entities. The interests and perspectives of these entities are represented in policy discussions, organized events with the West Wing, EOP senior staff, and IGA staff throughout the departments and agencies. The IGA can be staffed in a variety of ways, but two arrangements are most common. The first, each deputy and that deputy's staffers are responsible for a type of government. Arrangement two, a group of staffers is responsible for a specific geographical region of the country. The IGA, as suggested above, represents the interest and perspectives of non-federal government entities, but its primary job is to make sure that these entities understand an administration's agenda and ultimately support it. The IGA must work with all other White House offices, especially the OPA and the OPL, and manage its staff throughout the department and agencies. The IGA staffers must therefore have communication skills, understand political nuance, and be willing to engage in complex policy discussions. They should also be not just generally responsive, but also proactive in seeking out the interest and perspectives of non-federal government entities. So we've covered a lot for today. Thank you for staying in there and leaning in and getting some knowledge. So remember, my people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. So today and every day, let's get some knowledge.